Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk you through the 12 books that I read in March. This is a little bit overdue, but I have been a bit ill, so if my voice goes a bit croaky, that is why. But like I said, I read 12 books in March, which I'm really happy about. A lot of these were on the International Book Prize long list because I'm trying to read the whole list. So I will keep my reviews of those quite short because I want to do a whole video about my experience reading the long list and try and do a ranking before the winner is announced. I think I've got 3 books left to read, so we'll see how we get on. I have hit a bit of a wall, I can't lie. But yes, in terms of March, I read 12 books, which was 3,506 pages. I have all my stats here. Again, they were all fiction books. In terms of genre, 10 of them were literary fiction, 3 historical, 2 horror, 1 sci-fi. And I read 5 physical books, 6 ebooks, and 1 audiobook this month. 3 of the books I read were from NetGalley. I've got really into using NetGalley recently. I'm finding it really fun. The thrill of getting accepted for a book that you're excited about is just unmatched. I don't know if that will wear off over time, but at the moment I am just loving it. I read 2 books from the library, which means, girl math, I saved £28.04, which I guess I can now spend on books. In terms of my Reading the World challenge, I read 7 translated books this month, and they were all women in translation, which we love. So I read books from Brazil, Argentina, France, and the Netherlands. I read a book from Taiwan. I have read a book from Taiwan, but it was a male author. So this month I read a female author from Taiwan. And then I read from 2 new countries, which were Bulgaria and Iran, which is really exciting. Without further ado, we will go through my books and I will rank them for you. So we'll start in 12th place with The Hill by Harriet Clark. I requested this on NetGalley because I thought it sounded really interesting. This is a story that follows a young girl whose mother has been incarcerated in prison for life. So she lives in New York. She lives with her quite difficult grandmother who has no empathy or sympathy for her daughter's crimes. She is very unforgiving. And every Saturday, this young girl has to climb the hill to go and visit her mother in prison. I thought this was such a unique story. I thought the writing was really beautiful. It's quite lyrical and very, very easy to find quotes that were really impactful. I enjoyed this exploration of having a parent in prison, a parent you can only see once a week in very sort of restrictive conditions. And I really enjoyed learning about the prison system. There was a point in the book where the mother was part of a program where she was training guide dog puppies. And I found that really interesting. It was definitely a really touching story, and I think it draws on a lot of the author's own experiences with her mother in prison. Unfortunately, the reason this is so low for me is that I just really struggled to get engaged with it. Every time I put it down, I had to force myself to pick it back up. I had no drive to finish this book. I'm finding it hard to pinpoint exactly why. I think the problem was that I didn't really feel connected to any of the characters, and because the story is a very deeply introspective, character-driven story rather than there being much plot, I think that's what made it a struggle to read for me. I will say I think I'm in the minority because I've seen glowing reviews of this, so if it does sound interesting to you, I wouldn't let my experience put you off necessarily. And this is published on the 5th of May of 2026. So then in 11th place we have Incidentals by Sheila Yasmin Marakar. This was another one I picked up on NetGalley because I thought it sounded like a fun thriller. So it's following a couple that take this luxury holiday to the Maldives to try and save their marriage, basically. They have a lot of issues going on. And on their way there, they meet an older, seemingly richer couple who seem like perfect friends for the trip. They're all going to the same place. They can hang out together. Then something tragic happens and it ends up being more of a mystery thriller. I was really enjoying this to begin with. I found the sort of analysis of the characters as a really deep analysis of the characters. You really start to understand why they are the way they are. Unfortunately, pretty much all the characters are pretty unlikable, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it made it a little bit boring because I felt like the mystery and thriller part of this book, which is what really made me pick it up, was kind of an afterthought. And when that wasn't happening, all you were kind of left with was two unlikable people arguing and moaning about each other, which isn't really what I'd picked up the book for. Like, I just wanted to know what was going on with the mystery part. And unfortunately, when you do finally find out what was going on, I felt like it was very rushed and it was a bit of a disappointment for me. So in the end, this wasn't really a great read for me. In 10th place, we have the first of the International Book of Books, We Are Green and Trembling by Gabriella Cabezon Camara, which is translated by Robin Myers. Like I said, I'll be brief with my reviews of these because I do want to do like a proper deep dive into my whole experience, which will include more detailed reviews. So this book is the reimagining of a life of a nun who fled the convent, lived as a man, and became a soldier during the Spanish conquest of South America. My overall thoughts of this is that I found it quite difficult to read and very confusing. I don't know if that's because of the translation or not. I found myself at a point where I think if I wasn't doing this challenge, I would have DNF'd it. I did feel like things did pick up at the halfway point, and I did find the concept very compelling. But overall, there was just more that I didn't like. It just sort of lost me, I think. In 9th place, we have The Remembered Soldier by Anjet Dani, translated by David McKay. This is also an International Book of Long List pick, and it is the longest on the long list, and it felt like it. This was a real tome. This took me a long time to get through. We're following a former soldier who is dealing with memory loss after the war, and he's living in an asylum, and a woman arrives and says, "Hey, I'm your wife, let's go home." And they go and try and rebuild their life, basically. It drew me in very quickly. It was a lot more engaging than I expected, and I am not the sort of person that normally reads war novels. I was a bit apprehensive, so I was pleasantly surprised by how easy this was to read and how much I was invested in it. I thought the narrative was really great throughout, and I really enjoyed being in the head of such an unreliable narrator. Like, that is my jam, and I really thought that was done really well. It was just really long. I felt like a lot of it was very repetitive, which does make sense because this is a man going through amnesia, but it was just a little bit boring in places. But by the last 100 pages, I was yanked straight back in, and I found the ending crazy and insane. I had to like put the book down and be like, what did I just read? The reason this is so low on my list is that I don't really know who I would recommend this to. Even though I did enjoy the reading experience, I don't know if I would have recommended it to myself looking back. So it's a difficult one. In 8th place, we have Women Without Men by Sharnush Parsipur. This is translated by Faridun Farrokh. This is a very strange little book. It's following the lives of 5 different women in Iran, and for various reasons, they leave behind the men in their life and end up living together. Magical realism is massive in this book, and I really enjoyed that. I thought there's like, for example, a woman gets turned into a tree, and I was like, I really relate to this journey. That resonates with me because all I want to do is go and lie in the woods and get covered in moss. But I did feel like it was missing something for me. I felt like the first bit where they all are going through their like separate journeys and slowly becoming connected, I found really impactful. But then I found like once they started living together, it just sort of didn't really go anywhere. And the endings of all their stories felt quite unsatisfying. So I just felt like it was a bit of like a drop at the end. There's a lot surrounding this book that is really interesting. I think it's been banned in Iran, and the author has been exiled or imprisoned. So it does feel like an important read, and I'm glad I've read it. But yeah, it was a iffy one for me. In 7th place, we have On Earth as It Is Beneath by Anna Paula Meyer. This is translated by Padma Viswanathan and is the first one of so far that I actually own to hold up, which is exciting. Oh no! I do own Women Without Men. I should have held that up for my whole spiel that I just did, but you can see it here now. But yes, On Earth as It Is Beneath, this is a very short little book. Not the sort of thing I think I would have picked up if I wasn't reading the long list, and that is one of my favourite things about reading it. Like, although I haven't loved every book I've picked up, I've really been pushed outside of my comfort zone in terms of what I'm reading. And this is sort of one of those, because this is a very traditionally masculine story. It's surrounding a bunch of men with guns and violence and action, which isn't normally my cup of tea. I like reading about women doing essentially nothing. So it's not the sort of thing I would have gravitated towards, but I did really enjoy it. It was really gripping. I read it in pretty much one sitting. This is following a remote penal colony where the warden has kind of lost his marbles a little bit and is, well, I say a little bit, a lot, because he is releasing prisoners into the woods at night and essentially hunting them down for sport. There's a lot of suspense, there's a lot of atmosphere. It's really gripping. I really kept reading because I desperately wanted to know what was going to happen. I think my only complaint with this is there was a little bit of maybe over editing or some sort of loss of context in some places where characters would sort of jump around or be in places they weren't supposed to be or contradict themselves a little bit, which was a bit weird and kind of drew me out of it, especially because it's so short. Like, those things were very noticeable. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and I definitely have this author's other books on my radar. In 6th place, we have another long list book. This is Taiwan Travelogue by Yang Shuangzi, which is translated by Lin King. This book felt like a real journey. I really loved this. It's set in the 1930s, and we're following a Japanese author who is visiting Taiwan during the Japanese colonial rule. And she is obsessed with food in a very fun way. She is like desperately wants to try every single kind of food out there. She loves food. And I found that a really interesting way to explore like a new country, basically, like to explore this new culture. It's also sprinkled with a lot of commentary on colonialism and power dynamics. And there's a very subtle and intimate queer love story, which I enjoyed. My favourite thing about this, though, was context of the translation. So it's presented as a translation of another story and then has obviously also been translated into English. It made it really feel real to me. Like, there's a lot of footnotes from the translators and there's a lot of deeper discussions, especially from Lin King at the end, about how she went about translating this. All that unique formatting and nuances really made me enjoy this purely as someone who's interested in translation of literature. We're now in our top 5. So in 5th place, we have Tradwife by Saratoga Schaefer. I am obsessed with the Tradwife phenomenon. I find it so interesting. I love watching like video essays and reading articles about it. And so this was an obvious pickup for me. This story is following a woman called Camille, who used to be a scientist but has dropped out of school, married a very traditional man. They've moved to a beautiful house in the countryside, and she spends her days cooking and cleaning and making life easy for her husband, as well as posting online about like beautiful pictures about how perfect her life is. We all know the type, but she feels that her marriage is missing something, and that something is a child, and she thinks having a child will make everything perfect. And she's willing to go to any length to have that child, including making a deal with the devil, you know? Extreme lengths, but we love a woman that knows what she wants and goes out to get it. I love a morally great main character, and Camille is perfect for this role. She is very frustrating in parts. She's difficult to read from, but I think the author did a great job of still making you have like sympathy for her and still making you root for her, even though you're like, girl, what are you doing? And I really found myself truly like emotionally invested in the story as she navigates all these different things, and particularly navigates the true horror of this book, which is not any demons and is her husband. And I listened to this on audiobook, and I was on dog walks literally gasping out loud at parts of it. I found it really fun time reading it, and I found the ending really satisfying, and yeah, I loved it. So if you've been looking at this one, I would definitely recommend. In 4th place, we have another Weird Girl book, which is Open Wide by Jessica Gross. This is peak Weird Girl. If you like books about women being obsessive or unhinged or feral or kind of disgusting or all of the above, this book might be for you. I don't even need to talk about it much because the premise is so simple. When you are with your partner, do you ever feel the urge to be literally inside them? You want to be so close to them, you love them so much, you're so obsessed with them that you literally want to open them up, climb inside and close yourself inside and be as physically close to them as possible. Do you? Because if so, you are like the main character in this book who feels that way about her boyfriend, is terrified of losing him. And as their relationship gets stranger and stranger, this insecurity kind of deepens. I enjoyed reading this. I felt uncomfortable pretty much the whole way through. I thought the ending was absolutely bonkers insane. It was so weird and creepy and gross, but also like I couldn't look away. My review of this is perfect amount of insane for me. So if you if you're like me and love a Weird Girl book, then get that one on your TBR. And then in third place, we have a book that I really wouldn't have expected to make it so high on my reading wrap up, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This was our pick this month for my in real life book club that I go to. It's not the sort of thing I would normally have picked up. I'm not really a sci-fi reader at all, but honestly, I loved this. Will admit I found it a bit slow and boring to start with, and I was a bit like, this isn't going to be for me. But then a character called Rocky turns up, and I fell in love with Rocky. I was locked in from that point and I loved it. And I don't know if anyone else is following, is anyone else following this insane human endeavor that's going on right now where Artemis 2 are flying around the moon? I feel very emotional about space at the moment. And I think this book is part of that, because a lot of this book made me very emotional. Like, I want to believe that the world will work together to solve issues. I want to believe when things come, like when push comes to shove, countries will work together. Do I truly believe that? Maybe not. But it's a nice thing to think about. It's heartwarming. I feel emotionally attached to this book. That being said, if I was going to be a bit more critical, do I think it's the best book ever? No. Do I think it's that well written? No. But it was fun. It was funny. It made me laugh. I had an absolutely great time reading it. I think in my limited experience, sci-fi can be quite heavy and inaccessible and serious. So for me, I was just enjoying reading something that was so lighthearted and accessible, I guess. It just wasn't that deep for me. Like, I wasn't looking for a prize-winning book. I was just looking for a fun time in space. And that is what I got. And I fell in love with an alien. So that was Project Hail Mary. Like I said, I'm very emotionally attached to this book and I will not be receiving criticism at this time. In second place, we have She Who Remains by Renee Karabash. This is translated by Isadora Angel. I thought this was incredible. I thought it was very haunting. It's set in a remote Albanian village, which is still bound to very archaic customs and laws. Things such as sacrifices and blood feuds, and one specific law that allows women to renounce their sexuality, to take an oath to stay a virgin forever. And if they do that, they can then live on as a man. And we're following our main character who has done that. She's a sworn virgin. I don't want to give any spoilers aside from that, because I do think it's worth going in slightly blind. It's quite a short book, but it's chock full of explorations of like trauma and identity and patriarchy and gender roles and family and violence. And it is a very dark and violent book. But I will say ultimately it felt like a love story to me, and that's all I'm going to say. I will say the writing was very poetic. It's very fragmented, and that has been something I've struggled with in the past with books that have a similar thing. But in this case, it just kind of clicked for me, like fairly quickly. I followed the narrative fairly easily. It was like listening to a woman telling her story to you. So I think if you're struggling in the first couple of chapters, I'd persevere, because I think it's worth getting past that fragmentation if it's something you're struggling with. And overall, I just found this beautiful and powerful and genuinely unlike anything I've ever read. So I'm really glad I picked this one up. And then we come to our first place, which is exciting. In first place was The Witch by Marina Dyer, translated by Jordan Stump. I managed to get this on NetGalley a few weeks before it was published. And like I said at the beginning, the thrill of getting accepted for a highly anticipated book is just crazy. Like, I'm not over it yet. I still feel like honored that that happened to me. If you can't tell with it being in first place, I really liked this. We're following a woman called Lucy, who is a witch. So she has various witchy powers, but unfortunately she's not that good at being a witch. Her powers are quite meh. And so she has two twin girls, and they are sort of an age now where she wants to initiate them into being witches themselves. And unfortunately, they immediately surpass her. They become very, very strong, and they quite literally sort of fly the nest and leave her behind. I thought the premise was interesting, but the thing I loved about this book is that it was really up my street in that it was very dreamy and surreal. There was loads of odd and slightly unnerving characters and events, and you're not really sure what's going on. You're like whisked along with the story, which kind of mirrors how Lucy is also just whisked along in her life. She's quite a confused and passive person. And I just thought the writing was beautiful. I love a book that can successfully create that like dreamlike feel and atmosphere. It really reminded me of when I first read The Wind Up Burned Chronicle by Haruki Murakami, and also reading Hiroko Oyamada's books, both Japanese authors, but that like dreamy feeling was what I loved about those books, and similarly was what I loved about this. I really enjoyed the themes. There was a lot of themes of motherhood, and I really enjoyed like the metaphors of the witchiness. I loved reading people's analysis of this after I'd finished it. And honestly, my only complaint was that I wish it had been a bit longer. So hence why it's top of my list, because I didn't really have anything I disliked about it, except I would have liked to stay in the world for longer. I would have happily got lost in like that writing style for a lot longer than I did. And I'll definitely be looking up the author's other works that have been translated into English. And that is all the books I read this month. It was a great month, really. I can't complain. I've enjoyed getting into NetGalley. I'm already reading a couple more books from NetGalley as we speak, and I've enjoyed reading the long list. It was a very long list heavy month, and I'm already really excited to do my wrap up at the end of April. But if you've got this far, thank you for watching. Let me know what your favourite book of March was, and I will see you in the next video.